Hello everyone, I'm Britta Wesley. This is my video debate for debate number 4. Is global climate change a major national security concern? And I argue yes, it is a major national security concern, arguably the most threatening national security concern. In my opinion, it is the most threatening national security concern. Primarily because climate change is a phenomenon so different from other national security threats that we face because it affects every nation on the planet. Other national security threats that nations face sometimes overlap, they often do, but every nation faces a different national security threat. It's different for their people, it's different in some way, but climate change is the one national security threat that no one can escape and is in some way affected by. Um, Albeit some people are more affected by climate change than others based on their socioeconomic conditions and other factors. But the point is, everyone experiences some kind of consequence due to climate change, despite your nationality, despite any other trait. And then another thing that makes climate change even more threatening is the fact that it's caused by human activity, but we're so close to the point where human counteraction will be unable to prevent its effects. For other national security concerns, there is to some extent the ability to counteract an action, and all national security threats are, not all, most are human caused, and there's usually a specific action or policy we can make or take to counteract the effects of that threat. But climate change is so terrifying because we had the opportunity and we lost it, basically. At this point, I mean, it's still debated, but at this point, it's very likely that we are beyond the ability to go back to like a healthy earth that we once lived on. I mean, the only thing we can do at this point, if we act now, is to counteract some of the worst effects of climate change and then kind of deal with the other stuff that we have brought upon ourselves. And back to that point of how long we have, scientists obviously are still debating how long we have because there isn't a specific way to decide. I guess this is when the earth is going to be unusable. However, in 2019, the UN released a report saying that 11 years are all that remain to avert catastrophe. And for many national security threats like terrorism or nuclear proliferation or cybercrime, there isn't a timeline for policymakers. Like there isn't any kind of, typically there is no sense of how long do I have to fix this issue. But for climate change, we've known since we started finding out about it how bad it was, what we were doing to ourselves and the earth, and how long it would take to affect us all detrimentally. And yet here we are. However, with global climate change, I'm so sorry. We know when too late will come. We know it's coming soon, if not has already happened. And we know how long we have to act to combat this unique threat, specifically how long we have to act to fix the issues that are prevalent today, which are far worse than they were 50 years ago when climate change was discovered, obviously. However, what makes it so interesting about this security threat compared to others is that every nation has such a different response to climate change. When I think about other national security threats, I mean, you usually can expect somewhat of a similar response from nations to a similar threat. Obviously, it's not going to be the same, but you can kind of predict how a country will react to a bombing or a cybersecurity threat or whatever. You can typically predict what actions they may take. But for climate change, every nation is so different, and yet they all always prioritize economic profit over the health of the earth and the safety of our planet. And one of the best not one of the best, but one of the most recent examples of this, which is also a good example, is the recent G7 summit, which happened a few days ago. I wanted to point out the one climate action they discussed, which was their pledge to jointly mobilize $100 billion per year from public and private sources through to 2025. However, in discussing this, there was little detail in the application of this policy, and again, it was the only climate action discussed at the summit. The G7 summit is the perfect international stage for the world leaders to discuss what they can do for climate action, and they discussed at the G7 summit that we are the world's superpowers, we are the top contributors. I read something from the UN, I believe, or maybe not the UN. I read something from the climate or from the G7 summit that the nations represented there contribute 20% of carbon emissions of the entire world. So they understand, like, we are the ones who need to take action now, and yet they only discussed one action out of many that need to be discussed. Most importantly to me, in my opinion, would be carbon emissions. It's likely the most damaging aspect of human-caused climate change. And yeah, they discussed one thing, which was financial support. Again, economic profit. Well, I guess not economic profit, economic aid. But there was plenty more to discuss, which they did not. And to me, in my opinion, global climate change is the most life-endangering national security threat, because not only is it such a complex issue with so many moving parts that you have to fix all together to fix anything, it affects everyone differently. Every nation takes the liberty to respond in a different way and take different levels of responsibility. And most importantly, because our world leaders of the superpowers of the world are refusing to take any valuable action, and which is very different from most national security concerns like terrorism. Usually there is a quick and oftentimes valuable response. But for climate change, there's none of that. And that's why I believe not only is it a major national security concern, it is the most important one. Thank you.